This week on This Too Shall Pass, my first occurrence of domestic violence, it was Thanksgiving. There were drinks there, but no one else was like sloppy drunk. There was a lot of drinks because of the quantity of people, not for one person to consume it all. It was so embarrassing that I was like, okay, let's just get in the car. We merged onto the highway. I was just like, I'm going to have to explain myself. What do I say to my family when they ask me about your behavior? And before I can even finish the entire conversation, his hand was closed, swinging at me. I was driving, knocked me in the right eye in the middle of the highway, swerved down into the ditch on the highway, back onto the curb. He looked at me, I looked at him, and we finished driving home. Welcome to the This Too Shall Pass podcast. Trust me, I know life can be. This is an inclusive space for our stories and lessons to be heard and learned from without judgment, because this too shall pass. Welcome back to another episode of This Too Shall Pass. Tonight is going to be a good one. We're going to go over what's inside the mind of someone surviving from domestic violence. But before we get into it, wherever you are streaming or listening to us, where podcasts are heard or listened to, if you can give us a like or a follow, join our tribe, get to know us a little better, and share us to a friend if you're enjoying what you hear. Also, if you would like the visual to see how the podcast is done in person, on the couch, how we look, and honesty, find us on YouTube. YouTube, you're able to subscribe, like, comment, let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, how you feel about it, and we'll listen to them and get right back to you. And also, I found a good comment from a YouTube video that I was on with Pivot with Purpose with Carla Willimaris, and it talks about the same, not the same topic, but it's commenting on what we're going over today. So let's read it. It is from @Caitlin Wade 9941. I relate to this so much. I love that people talk about it because I have been fearful to speak up because I don't want people thinking I want attention, when in reality, I want others who are suffering in silence to know that they can get out. I've done it twice, been married twice, and divorced them both by myself. Wow, no attorney. You can get out, and there are many resources. So glad you made it out. This is really good. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for writing this. She said that she was married. Let me make sure I got that right. She was married twice and divorced twice and represented herself both times, no attorney. I do think that it is important to speak out. And it's not, and I understand also what she's saying about fearful of wanting to just do it for attention or seek validation, because that's often a comment that I've gotten as well. And I don't think it's for that at all. I think she is very much so correct in her feelings, saying that it is just to build a community, just to get your voice out there. Just let someone know. I just feel like if it doesn't apply to you, swipe on. You don't have to be here. But if it helps you, or you know someone that's maybe struggling, or it's the summertime and someone's wearing a turtleneck and it's not dressed appropriately. I remember I used to be really sad that my family didn't lean in more on questions with me when I was hiding bruises in their face. Like, I think for me, I was like, dang, I'm not going to say anything. I don't know how I wore a big baggy t-shirts and sweatpants to the beach over a bathing suit. No one said anything. No one asked anything. So I kind of just learned how to hide it instead of to learn to tell my truth. And I think if it was more inclusive and we all just shared the little tidbits or stories that we have accomplished, it can and it does help someone else. So we're going to go into her story, her voice. Today I'm shouting out Harbor House. I do believe Harbor House is nationwide, but the Harbor House specifically that I'm talking about is Harbor House here in Orlando, Florida. Harbor House was a huge self-taught moment for me. They're nonprofit. They don't want anything from you. It is 100% free from start to finish. And it's personal. When you call, you'll tell them what you're going through. I feel like it's very caring and open. It's not forced. It's not like as soon as you answer how 911 is very intense. It's not like that. It is very calming. They ask you if you need help or what exactly you're looking for. I know Harbor House does offer a safe place for women, men, and children trying to leave or get out of a domestic violence relationship. At that time that I was seeking them, I was actually already out, but I didn't know how to help myself legally. They taught me how to file for a restraining order, what floor it's on, how often I need to keep up with it. What's my job in making sure that my case gets seen through and I get the best criminal results or longer restraining order that I can, because just because you get a restraining order, it can come with a lot of stipulations, and restraining orders usually do not last forever. If you want them to last forever, you have to keep up with certain dates and modify and know who to speak to. And Harbor House helped me with all of those tedious things that at that time I didn't know, and I shouldn't know. I think it's weird to know all of the processes of the legal system or how to get help if you've never done it before. Harbor House was able to show me how to do it step by step. A good way that you can reach them is www.harborhouseflorida.com. They also have a 24-hour confidential crisis hotline. The number is 407-886-2856. And again, I do believe that's the one from here in Orlando, Florida. You can also Google them or look them up on your computer. I do encourage everyone to clear your histories or your search history if you are in a relationship or have a partner in a relationship with domestic violence. They do have a hide my screen filter, and it just drops it to the bottom, but it doesn't clear your history. Harbor House was a huge help to me. It's kind of like if you teach a man to fish, he can feed himself forever. That's kind of how they were for me, because I had to file a restraining order twice. And I feel like if I just went in there and told my story and they handled it all, the second time I would have had to start all over. I wouldn't have known where to go. I wouldn't have known, to request the cops when they came over, take photos, Polaroids on the scene. I wouldn't have known to save my Polaroids in a disc format and the judges accept those via mail and you don't have to go to the courthouse. I didn't know that even though you may not have bruises, domestic violence comes out in a lot of different ways. They actually broke down a lot of the ways that are still considered domestic violence without being physically harmed. I didn't know that it covered mental or it was another one, sexual abuse. I didn't know all of those things fell under domestic violence under that umbrella. So I think Harbor House is a great resource. Even if you don't need it, I think it's still a great resource to know regardless, because we're all women. Hopefully we interact and have good, fellow women friends, and maybe someone needs it. I've seen a Harbor House or a safety hotline pull slip in every public women's bathroom because it is that common. And I think if you just let people know there is a way out, very similar to what Caitlin said, then maybe the next woman won't stay as long. So inside of the mind of a domestic violence victim, the victim is myself. And sometimes I don't even like to consider myself that. Survivor might be a better term for me. And I think I actually accepted victim in the beginning because I did feel like a victim. I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I was broke. I didn't have it together. There wasn't one thing in my life, any of the buckets or shovels or hats that women wear, nothing was going right. We had nowhere to stay. The house, no one was paying the bills. He had left. The kids didn't have daycare. So at that time, I felt like a victim because I felt like everything was happening to me. Now that I speak about it from a survivor standpoint, I can say that I made it through, and there is a way for you to make it through as well. But it definitely took time, and it definitely took a shift in my mind frame to be okay considering myself a victim, especially when we only consider ourselves victims in situations that were out of our control. So the fact that I knew maybe towards the end that he wasn't that great, and yet I still went back home, or I still, tried to make it work. Sometimes people make it seem like you asked for it, or what did you expect? I definitely don't think it's that way. And it definitely doesn't start out that way in the beginning of the relationship. I had never experienced domestic violence before my marriage. I had definitely fought with a partner or someone that I'd liked. And when I say fought, I mean argue out loud, maybe, a couple of slam doors, talk to each other, you block each other, but I was never physically hurt. I was never bleeding. I was never left unconscious. I never had someone follow me to my job and then almost make me lose my job because I wouldn't come outside. I never had someone taunt me with the police like my ex did, saying, well, when the police get here, I'll still be here because you have to come outside regardless. I didn't feel the fear with anyone else ever until I got into my marriage. And possibly that's maybe why I gave it so much leeway. I thought it was something I could fix. I'd never been exposed to it before, so I didn't know it can get worse. but it does. And probably the best thing I can tell anyone suffering from domestic violence, if you don't go get counseling or take some interventions in yourself and in your marriage, if you want to make that work, I think you do have to get intervention. You can't just say that you as the woman or you as the man are going to fix it, because you can't fix the other person. It has to be a two-person plan, and sometimes separation is what's needed for you to grow individually and, I don't know, make it a safe home for everyone. Because if you're the only one getting hit or you're the only one being talked down to, I don't see how that would work. And I know that's a red flag for me moving forward. Any sort of physical touch or wrong placement, I guess, in anger, it's not a hug or anything. It's deliberate. It's there to hurt you. It's there to get your attention. It's there to make you shut the fuck up. It's there to prove a point. And sometimes I'm kind of ashamed I stayed that long. I don't have any fear or hesitation with him anymore when I see him. But I didn't see him for years after we split. It took me a long time. One thing I am proud of, it didn't make me resent my kids. I didn't feel like my kids came from someone violent, so they're going to be violent. I've never had that connection with my kids like that. If anything, my kids are the reason why I'm still here. Because if it was just for me, just to wake up for me, I probably wouldn't go to work. I probably wouldn't eat. I probably wouldn't want to, put in all this effort. But my kids are like that one happy thing that I have, and that's current to this day, too. I would give the shirt off the back, the last I had, eat nothing for them to smile, for them to be happy. So they're probably I know they are a huge motivation as to why I kept going and why I probably didn't give up. The next part is it always violent? I would say no. It's weird for people to automatically think, how did you not know? How would I know? I didn't know him. He was a stranger. So when I met him, he introduced himself and I introduced myself. Those were just an exchange of names or a number. And maybe we met up in a week and went to dinner. We met up again 2 weeks later and, I don't know, went to a gathering or a festival downtown. The relationship builds. For me, I don't think it got violent until I became isolated. Once my dad didn't swing by every day. Once we didn't live next door, like to relatives and we were really close. Once he feel like he put us in a certain house and he had all the control and I was no longer working and my family was no longer close by, the isolation for me was very scary, and he knew that. And he leaned into it when he could. It was hard for a long time. No one was physically near, so I felt a little embarrassed or like a burden if I reached out and put my burdens onto somebody else. But it definitely didn't start out violent. If anything, it was great. He cared for my 2 older children that I had when we started that relationship. He was kind to them. He picked up the slack. He was a normal partner. But when the alcohol picked up and the kids picked up, meaning that we went from 2 kids to 4 kids, and we went from, small daycare bills to a lot of daycare bills, and he felt like, oh, I have to provide for all this. I don't want to do this. He was frustrated with, I guess, how quickly our lives picked up, and the only person he can blame was me. And it wasn't a lot of alcohol. And some nights he wouldn't come home. I remember it was me at home with 4 kids. Everyone, mind you, is under 5. We had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and then Aaron was like 6 months. So it was 4 kids under 5. And the only thing I wanted to do was use the dishwasher. And it's probably something funny because everyone nowadays uses the dishwasher. If you don't have to wash it, load that thing up real nice and organized, pop a pot in there, click start. It's like magic when you reopen it. It's one less thing you had to do. And I was really overstimulated at the time, probably still going through postpartum. And I started to notice the dishwasher wasn't working. So when he came home from work, I asked him about it. I was like, I don't know. I didn't put anything in it. That's also something I did. I always took the blame first before I asked him something. Like, oh, I didn't do anything, but do you think you can maybe look at the dishwasher, even though I knew I didn't break it, I didn't do anything to it. I should have just had the confidence to ask, hey, do you know what happened to the dishwasher? Or do you think we can call someone to get it looked at? The responses were always like, do you have the money for it? Are you going to pay for it? There's a rag and soap. Figure it out. So I'm washing breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then he gets home late in his pan. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He gets home late and then his pan. And one day, one of my son's balls rolled underneath, like before the cabinet meets the tile, it's a gap. And when I reach down to pick it up, you can see the cord. So he purposefully unplugged the dishwasher from the socket in the back where the cabinet was. So I just thought it didn't work. You can slide your dishwasher out from the cabinets and there's a plug. I didn't say anything, and I didn't even plug it back in. I tucked the cord back where he tucked it, and I pushed it back. It was an argument not worth having, and he already made me feel like I didn't participate enough financially to the family, so why would I plug it in, make the water bill go up? He knows that I plugged it in, and then it was a never-ending cycle of just fighting and yelling and screaming over things that I couldn't control. I was not working, so I wasn't going to argue with someone about bills, and I wasn't working. And that was a first time for me. I always worked. I was already a single mother of two, so I was used to working. I worked when it was just us two, and I was working when we first started dating. But as the kids came, and daycare is not cheap, as the kids came and they were back to back, I didn't assume that it would be just me, but I thought at least I can maybe work on the weekends or the nights. But he absolutely refused it. It was just like, who's going to watch them? Not me. I have to go to work, and when I'm not at work, I'm sleeping. So you just got to figure it out. And then if he had free time, he wasn't home. Then when he did come home, he was angry. So it was like that last year and a half, I don't even think we slept in the same room. I slept in the room with my youngest, and he slept on the couch. It got really quiet in that house. We wouldn't talk to each other. We walked by each other. It was complete strangers in a house, but we were like only there for the responsibility. But if we spoke, it was nothing but toxic. But it didn't start out that way. So a part of you is like longing for what it used to be, longing for the laughs or the one-on-one dates or any sort of positive interaction that's not teaching you that you're scum of the earth. That probably was the first time I noticed that I was like making a huge bond with my kids because they were literally the only people I talked to. He isolated me from all of my friends. I didn't live within an hour of anyone. My parents can only come by on the weekends because we were like almost 2.5 hours out from them, and they both worked during the week. I remember it was my car. It was a car I had gotten in high school, so I kept it into the marriage. We were only like 22, so the car wasn't that old. But he didn't come with a car. But because he was working, he took the car, so we had nowhere to go. If we ran out of milk or eggs or water during the day, you sat until he got home from work. And then usually I knew when he came home, he was angry. Don't ask. I knew when he got up early in the morning, he was rushing out to work to leave, so I just didn't say anything. Until it got like really there's nothing left. Like there's no way to make something shake. I've made a meal out of nothing, but when there was nothing left, I had to ask. I had to say something, and that's when it usually was a huge regret. My first occurrence of domestic violence, probably year 2, Thanksgiving, my aunt's house. He got sloppy drunk, and this was at my aunt's house, so this was my side of the family. His family was not there, but we were all family, by marriage, but it was on my side of the family. It was Thanksgiving. There were drinks there, but no one else was like sloppy drunk. There was a lot of drinks because of the quantity of people, not for one person to consume it all. It was to the point that I had grandparents there, I had my aunts there, and these are all older generations to me. Not that I want to appear perfect to them, but I wanted to at least appear sober. I wanted to at least appear like we can hold a conversation. And I had 4 kids running around in all different directions. That wasn't the problem because everyone had kids, or it was a family time, so it wasn't really a big deal. But to have to pick up someone who's 5 years older than you because he fell face down into the tile or was walking so like wobbly that he knocked over the whole centerpiece, and everyone's looking at me because I'm the only sober one. So I had to try my best to get a hold of the situation. I picked up what I could that wasn't broken, and I basically was like, we just have to go. We have to go. And he was like, why? We're having a good time. It was so embarrassing that I was like, okay, let's just get in the car. I hurried and got the kids in the car, and we merged onto the highway. I was so embarrassed. I believe I was crying. I was just like, I'm going to have to explain myself. What do I say to my aunts? What do I say to my family when they ask me about your behavior? And basically it was just like, you don't tell them shit. It's none of their business. And I was like, well, how is it none of my business? And before I can even finish the entire conversation, his hand was closed, swinging at me. I was driving, knocked me in the right eye in the middle of the highway. Me and all the kids swerved down into the ditch on the highway, back onto the curb. He looked at me, I looked at him, and we finished driving home. We didn't talk about it again. We got home, I showered, I went to bed. That was the first time. And that's a time that a lot of people probably will say that's when you should have left. But to me at that point, it was just something I had to learn through, or something I could have done better, or we're only 3 years in, or the kids are so small. But now looking back in hindsight is a blessing and a curse, because you're able to judge things, from afar. But when you're in it, I still didn't feel like I had anywhere else to really go. I stayed. I'm going to be honest with you. I stayed because I had low confidence. I did not believe in myself. I was isolated. I had no one around to tell me, hey, you deserve better, or you could do better. If you think of me at the time, I was 22, 23, 3 children's fathers, now 3 separate kids, low income to no money, food stamps, no daycare assistance. And it was a prayer if the lights were even on. Like, where was I going to go? And I was struggling with codependency at the time. So I sometimes say, who would want me now? Now I'm damaged. Now the self-esteem really affects how you move in your day-to-day life. And I just thought it was a season. I thought it was something we could grow out of, but sadly, it didn't. I carried a lot of guilt and shame because of that. I don't think I should have stayed that long now that I'm looking at it now, but at that time, I made the best decision that I could for myself. Everyone assumed that we were so happy. I remember hearing my dad say, take care of my daughter. I remember all my family, they checked in a lot when I was a single mom, I guess because I was a concern. Oh, she's young. She has 2 kids. We should reach out often. Once I got married, everyone just fell off. No one checked in anymore. When we went to the beach, I never showed up, but I showed up every other year. No one ever reached out and said, oh, it's not like her. Oh, Ariel never misses Christmas. Why didn't she show up this year? No one reached out. Everyone just thought you're married and you're safe. And some people are, but a lot of people aren't. And I think if you know someone, or it's a friend and you know their behavior, it wouldn't hurt to reach out. You have a friend that you always see a certain type of year and they just stop showing up. You have a friend that was very confident in her body and now wears a turtleneck and a tube top. A full tube instead of just a tube top. And these are people that were very confident. You have interacted with them. You know their personality. To judge it, I would reach out. I would ask. I would question it. And I wouldn't make it seem like you don't notice the difference, because to me, that made me stay even more quiet. It made me feel like, well, if no one even notices that my whole back is covered in bruises and we're sitting in the same room and I'm the only one in a turtleneck, why am I going to sit here and cry and ruin everyone's mood? Everyone else seems to be happy, so I just need to figure out a way to be happy too. That's something I struggled with, opening my mouth and actually showing my bruises, stop layering all the foundation. I'll never forget when he showed up to my job. I finally got the confidence to leave. It's the first time I left. He knew where I lived because we were married. We lived in the same house. He seen my paychecks. We had a joint bank account at the time. He showed up at my job before I clocked in and went to the front desk and was yelling and demanding that I come out because he had money for the kids and I need to let him, back in the house and back with the kids. And he made this huge scene to the point that my boss pulled me aside and said that, if I'm going to keep causing these types of disruptions, then they're going to have to let me go. At the time, that was the only job I had. And I just got it because we had just left a relationship with him. And the money that he left at the front was $30. It wasn't even enough to really make something shake. But it's sad how much that $30 was to me at that time. And a part of me was like, oh, he's thinking about us, so he's going to do right. Or, oh, he's thinking about the kids, he's going to fix it. And a lot of it is just control. Someone that's used to having control of you is going to always crave it. And once you cut them off, you no longer feed their source. They're going to react. They're going to show out. They're going to replace it with something else. And I urge you to let them replace it. My last hit, I was left unconscious in the front yard of my apartment complex. I was breathing, but I was completely out. I didn't even remember how I got there for a little bit. I didn't know where my car was. I didn't know exactly where I was when I sat up. My downstairs neighbor called 911. This was probably the third time. We were still not living together. I had my own place with my kids, but he had asked to come over, or I just want to talk to you. And I did it, and I don't even know why I did it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to help you with the kids, or I'm going to pay for this bill. He was just like, I want to talk about how we can possibly, co-parent. So maybe I was looking for some help. It was still me and the kids. We had finally gotten an apartment. My job was stable, and he just got in and took over my space. Emotionally, vocally. He started yelling at the kids, telling everyone what to do, eating my food that I spent my last to put in the fridge that he didn't help with. He was like laying in my bed. It was just really disrespectful all over my apartment, talking to people all loud, didn't care. He just moved in without asking, without talking about anything, and I was supposed to accept it. So when I brung it up, I did wait until my kids go to bed. I don't know. I think that's probably what my parents did because I never saw them argue, and I feel so weird. I don't know when argument's going to start, but I know when a comment is confrontational, and I know when a comment makes someone stand on their truth and actually answer, and those situations can trigger an argument. So I do wait until my kids go to bed or they're not home for me to ask, like, I want you to leave my apartment. Like, I want you to be gone in the morning. I want you to please get your stuff and go. And I'm, again, saying please and can you and may you leave my space. I followed him down. I had like a little loft that the steps led down to the exit door at the time. And I remember we both walked down. He had his bag and I was turning around to lock my door. And at the time I had a jug of laundry soap at the front door. I just hadn't brung it up the steps yet because it was heavy. And he picked it up and swung it at me. And it caught me in the face. And that's it. That's all I really remember. And by the time I got up, the police were asking me if I had kids, if I had known who he was. My neighbor dialed 911 for me, and I really do appreciate it because my front door was wide open. I'm just a female in pajamas laying in the front yard of an apartment complex where like literally hundreds of people are living. And I don't even think it was that late. It might have been 9:30, 10 o'clock, but it wasn't like a 2 a.m. kind of situation. So who knows how long I would have laid there. My front door stayed open for my kids. They were asleep. But that triggered a lot of issues for me, and a lot of issues that I think was like that straw breaks the camel's back. It was enough because my kids were home, because I'd already tried to separate, and then now I was hit again. It triggered DCF cases. I had to prove that I was putting the welfare of my children in the best interest because I let him come over to my house. And then I got all the accusations like, well, if you know he hits you, then why do you let him come over? Well, no one else will help. And I can't yell at my mom about my kids that I made with someone else. Sometimes I feel like you can only put the blame on the person you made the children with. So that is isolating in itself. After that, I did my first restraining order and we won. I got criminal charges prosecuted for battery and abuse on a pregnant woman. I was carrying my 5th child, Owen, at the time. Very early on, maybe 10 weeks, but we never went back. I carried Owen from that moment until birth to now. I think his dad has maybe seen him 3 times in the last 3.5 years. That was the last hit for me. I know it's kind of personal and very awkward to ask you if you've ever been in a domestic violence relationship, but I'd like to know, has it ever affected you? Have you ever seen it? Maybe it's not you at all. Maybe it was your parents. Maybe it was your aunts. Maybe it was a boyfriend that you loved. And love is such a hard thing to unwind. You have to do it by yourself. Breaking up with someone or leaving someone, that's nothing that someone else can do for you. And that's probably the scariest part as a mom is I know I have to push my kids out there. I know they're going to fall in love. I just have to trust them to make the right choices. You don't have to always agree with someone that you're with, but you do have to agree not to physically hurt people. And that's just really where I stand on that. Here's a fun fact. It takes 7 attempts for the average woman, which is an everyday woman, not a superhuman, not a someone extraterrestrial, and a regular woman, someone who's just working an average 9 to 5. It takes an average woman 7 attempts to leave an abusive relationship. I tried at least 4 to 5 times before I finally was able to leave. And that is something that's considered normal. I don't want you to feel damaged or you're not learning your lesson if you go back. I don't think it works to go back, but like I said, that breaking point is for you to reach. I just hope you're able to reach it, while we're still living, while we're still on this side, because a lot of women, they don't see it coming, and sometimes it is too late. And I wanted to make sure that I loved myself more than I loved being with him. And that was how I was able to just choose myself. 10 signs of a healthy relationship: comfortable pace, trust, honesty, independence. That's the big one for me. I did not have independence at all. Respect, equality, kindness, fun, healthy conflict, taking responsibility. 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship: intensity, possessiveness, manipulation, isolation, sabotage, belittling, guilting, violating, betrayal, deflecting responsibility. I think with social media, it has become a little bit more, not normal, but that word narcissism is like flying around every day on every reel. But it's like, I don't think anyone talked about that when I was growing up. I don't think anyone taught me how to notice when someone's gaslighting me, how to notice when someone's taking advantage. We knew what sad was. It was the emotion on the board in the smiley face with the mouth the other way, but no one told me what that felt like. No one ever, until I got to an adulthood space, ever talked about depression. I didn't even know it was really a thing. When people were like, oh, I'm so sad I can't eat. I'm so sad I can't turn the lights on. I can't go to work. I had no idea what that was. I just knew it never happened to me until it did. I can tell you today, depression is real. Mental health is a serious issue. And I think to be healthy at anything, you have to work at it. And with work comes time, but with time comes dedication, and it can be done. Let's jump into National Domestic Violence Hotline number. They can be found online at www.thehotline.org, or their national contact number is 1-800-799-7233. We're going to jump into Without Judgment. So this is the segment where you send us an email. You let us know how you feel. You give us a letter. You want our advice. You want to put something that you've persevered through. This is where you send it to thearielbpod@gmail.com. These are the questions I have today. When did you know it was the right time to tell your story? I had a counselor that once told me, if you still cry about it, you're not over it. Because I used to always say, oh, I'm healed, I'm over it, I'm better. We've moved on. We haven't been in the same house a year. I'm good. I got that. But like certain gestures from certain men still triggered me. I didn't let certain people around my kids. I still hadn't told my parents why I actually filed for divorce. So when she said that to me, if you still cry about it, when you talk about it, you're not over it. She's like, do something to be over it. She's like, if you ever really told your story, have you ever really just laid your truth out and just let it go how it goes? So me telling my story really came from advice from a therapist, because I'd been going 2 years now. And I just kept saying, oh, I'm healed. Time has healed me. But a lot of me was not. And I still think there are a lot of parts emotionally I am still working on. I want to get to a place where I feel safe to open up my heart and my home to a man who's not my kid's father, because now I'll be doing it with 5 kids that are not related to this man at all. And I think that's a lot of trust, and that's a big step. And I need to know how to do that the right way, because I haven't always made the right choices. How did your ex-husband react the first time you had to tell someone about the abuse? Well, the first person I told about the abuse was the cops. So he wasn't happy at all. And he got found in my car that I was paying for. He stole my car from my house and took off from the scene on where he left me. So the first time I really talked about it and he heard how I felt through my voice was in a courtroom. So he wasn't happy. He didn't like it. But I had enough photos and evidence and 911 calls for me to at least have justable cause to at least get a restraining order for him not to come near me for a certain amount of time. But when I started to tell my story on social media, he didn't react. We've had a restraining order probably on and off for the last 5 years now. So when you finally really break that last branch of control, I think it changes a lot of things. I grew a lot as a person in 5 years, and I think he knows a lot of the little things he used to say to me to get under my skin no longer hurt me. But once a person knows what triggers you, they know what itches you, they know what sets you off, they do it easily. So I had to teach myself, just to listen and not react, not to feed into it, not to, pour gasoline on the fire. Just, oh, you're a bad mom, you're a stupid bitch, or you don't do this, or I'm going to come get, okay. And I just made sure I did my part on my end, following through with a restraining order if he threatened to hurt me. I followed through with making sure that my kids were included in my restraining order since he said, oh, your kids are so important to you. What'll happen if they're not there? I made sure, even though I said okay and I blew it off, I didn't feed him emotionally, but I still took what he said valid with worth, with weight, and I made sure I did something on my end before his next emotional, outbreak took place in my home or with my kids. I want to leave my husband, but I'm a little worried about being alone forever. Any advice? No. I don't have any. I fear that now. I fear dying alone. You have your kids, but your kids don't feel you like a positive partner where they're not supposed to. They're not, your children's shoulders aren't meant to bear the parents' responsibilities or what you guys went through. I think it takes a lot of soul searching, and you're going to have to go to therapy. If the only thing you're worried about is not finding a partner, I think that's definitely something we can fix. We just have to know how to look for the right partner. What are, the red flags? What is gaslighting? Where are the steps where we maybe mistook or thought, oh, this is a nice gesture, and maybe it wasn't? I think once we figure out people's emotions and our own as a whole, it's easier to judge what we do and what we don't like. And it wasn't until I became alone that I actually kind of figured out who I was. I wasn't just in a house and a man crossing my fingers and praying every day he didn't leave. I was okay being by myself. I was okay raising my children. And if someone came along, I looked at it as a blessing or an added bonus. I wasn't looking at it as the end all be all. You are more than just a relationship status. And if the only thing you are looking for is a man, that's a problem. I think you should be able to love yourself in whatever phase of life you are in, because it is forever changing. Even if you have a good spouse, that spouse can still die. You still have to know how to function on your own. You came in this world by yourself, and you're going to go out by yourself. So you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and be okay with that. If someone good comes along, that should add to your life, but that shouldn't be the only thing you're searching for to find value in yourself. It's above me. This is a section in the show where I tell you some things that I've thrown my hands up to. When it comes to my ex-husband, I have thrown my hands up to ever accepting the fact that he will actually pay his weekly child support on time, because he won't. He's going to nickel and dime me, pay the minimum, work lower end salary jobs so he can possibly get the option to get it dropped, and then still not pay it when it's even at its lowest. My best advice to anyone going through the court system, whether that is domestic violence, restraining orders, child support, stay on their ass. If you don't make your case important to you, it's not important to nobody. You will always be another, tick on the board. We're not the only people looking for help. I know when it's personal to us and we're going through it, we want the whole world to be sad with us, but life actually keeps moving for a majority of the world, even though your day is going bad. So I throw my hands up to it, and I don't budget off his child support, but I do make sure I track it. I do make sure I know every routing number when it hits my bank account. And at the end of the month, I print out my bank account statement. I can see how much he didn't pay. I mail it into the courthouse. They do it from there. I didn't have to miss a day from work. I didn't have to, reschedule someone else to pick my kids up because I got to wait downtown in a long line. Figure out how you can access your cases online. We're living in 2023. Just about everything is on the computer. You can file restraining orders, injunctions, child support, contempt of court, everything online from your computer, some of it from your phone. So I throw my hands up to thinking that you can make someone responsible to the fullest extent just through a piece of paper, but you damn sure can keep your foot on their neck. Because one thing I won't do, if I bust my ass to raise my kids, you won't prosper while I'm doing our work, just me. So if I'm a sit and struggle, we're both going to sit. We're both going to be right here. And as they grow and I get better and we grow, we're all going to grow together. But I don't think it's right to ever give anyone a free pass on not raising the children they put here. Anyone out there interested in joining Making a podcast, less than 30 days, idea to launch is the perfect opportunity where you can learn to create a podcast that is easy. You can do it from home with just your microphone and your computer in less than 30 days. It's a step-by-step process, making it simple. Even the most technically challenged person can do it. Idea to Launch is the program to go to if you are interested at all, figuring out how podcasts work. Do you have a good idea? Is this something you can actually bring to life? Bring it to them, let them judge it. This is exactly how I'm doing this podcast now that we're all looking at. I am working with Idea to Launch, and I don't regret it at all. If you visit ideatolaunchpodcast.com and start sharing your unique voice with the world today, you can get your own one-on-one strategy call with Carla Willimaris, who is a well-known producer for some very large podcasts that you do know, including this one. Just for you being a listener on this podcast today, you get 50% off limited time if you use the code TTPS. So if you're interested in podcasts, I would definitely urge you to give Idea to Launch. Just let them know what you're trying to do, and they can handle it from there. I hope anyone out there struggling with domestic violence knows that you're worthy, you're worth it, you're not invisible. We're probably a lot more in common than you know, but you're not going to get anywhere by hiding. You're not going to get anywhere from staying small. You're not going to get anywhere by not speaking. You deserve better. If you have children, your children deserve better. And we got to just know that everyone is someone's daughter, someone's son, and they're loved by someone. And if no one's told you today, I love you, I'm happy that you were here. I'm happy we were able to share this space in a conversation. That is the end of this episode. I hope to see you next week. Take care of yourself. Make sure you follow the show for weekly episodes wherever podcasts are found so you don't miss an episode. I'll see you next week.